What is intellectual property? What is included within that umbrella?
So, intellectual property includes all types of protections for ideas or intangible things that could be owned by a person or a company. There's lots of different subtypes of intellectual property that apply to every type of creation. But the main one that I think applies for writers is copyright.
If I'm creating an article or a blog post, what gets copyright just in the process of creating it? And what would I want to actually submit?
A copyright is created immediately upon the expression. So it doesn't have to be public, although public expression is often the way that we express ourselves in some fixed medium. But it could be that you just type up an email or you write some code or you create an image or you write down your novel. The second that it comes from your brain onto a piece of paper or onto a computer screen, that becomes your creation. And as soon as you've created something that you've expressed in that fixed way, that gives you copyright protection. Ideas are not protectable. Only expressions of ideas are protectable. So once you've expressed it, you have a copyright. You don't have to apply for it. It's automatic.
Why has copyright become complicated since the introduction of ChatGPT and sort of the emergence of generative AI? What is going on in that space that creates some layers of complexity to understanding and applying copyright law?
There's two ways in which AI impacts copyright law. One is a question of whether people who use AI to create something are entitled to obtain a copyright for that. And then you have another question of if somebody uses your work to create an AI system or to train an AI model, is that an infringement of your rights in that copyrighted work? If you are using AI to create something, there are legal questions about whether that is a sufficient human expression. Under US copyright law, something that is eligible for copyright protection needs to be human authored. The United States Copyright Office has taken a position that if you use AI in the creation of your work, you are not entitled to copyright protection in that work. Now, I think that that might change once the courts get their hand on that kind of decision, but we'll have to wait and see.
Okay. So if I go write an article tomorrow or my research report or a video script or anything, and if I use ChatGPT to write it, and let's say it writes the draft, and then I do some human layering and maybe I edit 20% of it, but the rest of it is great. Just leave it as is. If I don't own that, because it was just a prompt and the AI wrote it, who does own it?
Yeah. So actually, nobody would own it if the Copyright Office's approach is the one that we end up sticking with, this idea that nobody owns things that were generated with artificial intelligence, because the AI is not a human and is not entitled to authorship credit under the United States law. And so in that instance, there is no human, nobody who has the capacity to bring a lawsuit who would have the ownership right over that work.
So
100
generative AI policies, like what is your thought on those as a first step for people?
Essential. I think having a generative AI policy is essential, not only from a legal perspective, but as from a business perspective as well. But I'll comment from a legal perspective that it could make the difference in you owning your work or not owning your work. It could make the difference in potentially being liable for something that you don't realize you might be liable for. So you have to be mindful. You're responsible for what you use from AI.